Good afternoon, class. Today we are going to be starting a new math lesson. Today we are beginning Topic 3, Lesson 5. Our learning intention today is I can make 10 to add numbers to 20. So let's get started. In our Envisions Volume 1 workbook, we are going to be beginning Lesson 5 on page 125. If you need to pause the video in order to get your notebook and open to page 125, please go ahead and pause the video. If you have your workbook open and you are on page 125, let's get started with our solve and share. Our solve and share says Andy says that he can find 9 plus 5 by starting with 9 plus 1 equals 10. What do you think about Andy's way? Show your work and explain. So let's see what we can work out. Mrs. Collier is going to use our counters to show Andy's way. So you can just watch this part. You don't have to draw all of these counters. So Andy says that he can find 9 plus 5 by starting with 9 plus 1 equals 10. Well, let's see. So if I take my counters, I'm going to start with 9. So I'm going to put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then I'm going to use my yellow counters to show the plus 1. Well, we know that Andy is correct with starting, that 9 plus 1 is equal to 10. So if I took my 9 red counters and my 1 yellow counter, that could show 9 plus 1 equals 10. But how can we use this equation to find 9 plus 5? Let's look. If we look at the two equations that Andy says he could use, we see he uses 9 plus 5 and 9 plus 1. Well, if we know that 9 plus 1 is equal to 10, and we want to find 9 plus 5, well, if we're adding 9 and 1, and also 9 and 5, then we would just have to add 4 more to the number 1 to give us 9 plus 5. So if I were to add 4 more counters, so I had 10 counters, if I were to add 1, 2, 3, 4, so if I had 10 counters here and added 4 more, that would give me 10. So I started with those 10 counters. I added 4 because to get from 9 plus 1 to 9 plus 5, I just had to add 4 more to 1 to get 5. So 10 plus 4 is equal to what? 14. I have 14 counters total. So if I used 9 plus 1 equals 10 to start out, when I know I need to solve to find 9 plus 5, well, that is the same as taking my 9 red counters and adding my 5 yellow counters to solve for 14. 9 plus 5 is equal to 14 also. So by starting with 9 plus 1 equals 10, I was able to see that we only needed to add 4 more to get to 14. So that helped me solve 9 plus 5 is also equal to 14.
You can make a 10 to help you add. How many red counters are there? Why are there 7 red counters and 4 yellow counters? The addition problem is 7 plus 4. The red counters are the 7 in the addition problem. The yellow counters are the 4 in the addition problem. Look at the 10 frame. How can you make a 10 with the counters that are shown? Select your answer.
So how can we make a 10 with the counters that are shown? So if we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 red counters and 1, 2, 3, 4 yellow counters, how can we make a 10 with the counters that are shown? Well, if this is a tens frame and we have 7 red counters, that means we would need to fill in 1, 2, 3 of the yellow counters.
Move 3 counters from the 4 to the 7. Now you have 10 and 1. Why is it helpful to make a 10 in the 10 frame? You know how to add with 10. What addition problem does the 10 frame show now? It shows 10 plus 1. 10 plus 1 is the same as 7 plus 4. What is the sum of 10 and 1? The sum is 11. How is 10 plus 1 like 7 plus 4? The sums are the same. Why are the sums the same? One answer is 10 is 3 more than 7. 1 is 3 less than 4. 10 plus 1 equals 11, so 7 plus 4 equals 11.
The sums are the same.
How do the 10 frames show that the sums of 10 plus 1 and 7 plus 4 are the same? The counters are arranged differently, but the total number of counters stayed the same. You have learned how to make 10 to help you add.
For our Convince Me section of our workbook on page 126, it says, how would you make 10 to find the sum of 9 plus 4? So Mrs. Collier just went ahead and made a quick 10 frame for the screen because I wanted to show you how we could make 10 to find the sum of 9 plus 4. So let's see. So if I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So if I put 9 red counters into my tens frame to show the 9, now I need to show plus 4. So if I were to show 9 plus 4, so my 9 red counters and my 4 yellow counters. So I still don't know what this is. But if I were to move one of these yellow counters and take that yellow counter and add it to my tens frame, that would then show me I have 10 red counters plus 3 yellow counters. And what is 10 plus 3? 10 plus 3 is 13. And that would be the same as saying 9 plus 4 is 13. Because all we did was take one of our yellow counters and have it join the 9 to make 10. Then we could add 10 plus 3 to give us 13. So our total sums are the same. So for our convince me section, you don't have to write the entire 10 frame, but if you just want to write 9 plus 4 equals 13 and 10 plus 3 equals 13. So how could we make 10 from 9 plus 4? We moved 1 from the 4 to the 9 to make 10, and then we made 10 plus 3. For our guided practice, it tells us to draw counters to make 10, then write the sums. So for number 1, we have 7 plus 6. So let's look at what our tens frame has. We have 5, 6, 7 red counters, so that shows the 7. Now we need to add 6. So we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 white circles. So number 1 was already completed for us. They drew the counters to fill in the rest of our tens frame. So they drew 1, 2, 3, but we are adding 6 total. So these circles down here are 4, 5, 6. So 10 plus 3 is the same as 7 plus 6. Both sums for 10 plus 3 and 7 plus 6 are the same. So we are going to make 10 in our tens frame to help us solve. Let's look at number 2. Number 2 says 8 plus 6. So in our tens frame, we have 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I need to draw counters to add the 6. So we are going to add 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we're showing 8 plus 6. So we have 8 red counters, and we had to draw in our 6 counters. Now if my tens frame is full, I know that this is 10 counters. So this is showing 10 plus 4. What is 10 plus 4? 10 plus 4 is 14. So that means that 8 plus 6, so just like how we had 8 red counters and then we drew in 6, so we made 10, added the rest, that is going to be the same sum. So we are just making 10 to help us solve. So as you work through your problems today, our two sums are going to be the same number. Now let's look at our independent practice on page 127. Like we saw on our last page in our guided practice, our sums are the same for each of our answers. So we will do number 3 together just to make sure we feel confident, and then I am going to have you complete the rest of the problems by yourself. So let's look at number 3. Number 3 says 7 plus 8 equals question mark. So our directions tell us to draw counters to make 10, then write the sums. So we are going to be just what we saw us doing in the guided practice and in the video. So we already have 5, 6, 7. So we have 7. Now we need to add 8. So we are going to draw 8 counters. So we're going to draw 1, 2, make sure you're doing this on your paper too, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we filled in the rest of our tens frame. So we had to add 8 so we could fit 3 in the tens frame, and then we drew 5 more to make 8 to show 7 plus 8. So we need to find out what 7 plus 8 is, but we made 10, so we are going to use us making 10 to help us solve it. So this is my tens frame, so my tens frame is full, so I know that this is 10. So I just need to add 5. So what is 10 plus 5? 10 plus 5 is 15. So that means that 7 plus 8 is also 15. Do you remember how we said our sums are going to be the same? So we used our tens frame, we made 10 and added 5, and that's the same as saying our 7 red counters plus our 8 red counters, and our 8 other counters that we drew in. That's the same as showing 7 plus 8, which is 15. So now I want you to work on number 4 and 5. And remember that your answers are the same. So if you get 15 on this side, that means it's also 15 on this side. So now I want you to pause the video and I want you to draw counters just like we did. So on number 4, you have 9 red counters. So you need to draw in 6 counters. And then you are going to do just what we did in number 3 and in our guided practice to solve. So if you need to look back in the video at all, please go ahead and do so. But I'm going to have you pause the video so that you can work on numbers 4 and 5. And when you play the video, I will begin talking about number 6 because I need to explain the directions for this one. So on numbers 6, 7, and 8, our friend tells us to draw counters to make 10. Use 2 different colors, then write the sums. So this is doing exactly what we have been doing so far, but it is asking us to use 2 different colors. If you do not have 2 different colors, what you can do is, for example, if Mrs. Collier was using her pencil, I could draw my counters with my pencil. I could make some counters look like this, so fill in a circle, and then some counters I could just draw a circle and not fill it in. So if you don't have different colors to use, you can also just do that with your pencil and that would work just fine. So for numbers 6, 7, and 8, it's just what we've been doing so far, except it does not have counters filled in for you. It wants you to fill in your own, and that's why I asked you to use 2 different colors so that you could see what your red counters would look like and then what your counters that you made look like. So on number 6, you are going to fill in 6 counters. So you can just write that with your pencil. 6 counters on the tens frame, and then you need to add 5 more, and then write the sums. So go ahead and pause on this page so that you can finish working on numbers 4, 5, if you're not done with those, all the way to number 8. And if you need to go back and watch any part of the video, like in our guided practice or the video, if you get stuck at all, please go ahead and do that. I want you to be able to go back and use the video if you need to. Now we are going to begin talking about page 128, the last page in our lesson for math today. So if you are still working on the previous page or still working on numbers 8, please go ahead and pause the video because we are going to begin talking about number 9. So our directions tell us for our last page to draw counters to help you solve each problem. Use 2 different colors. So just like how you did for numbers 6, 7, and 8, we are going to be doing that for the rest of our problems today. So let's look at number 9. Number 9 says Carlos sees 7 yellow birds in a tree. Then he sees 6 white birds. How many birds does Carlos see in all? So class, if you don't have a yellow and a white colored pencil, you again can just use your pencil like how Mrs. Collier showed you, and you can make some counters that you draw in your tens frame look like this with your pencil, of course a lot smaller, and then some you can make to look like this to show your different colors. If you don't have those colors, that is okay. So it wants us to use our tens frame to show the 7 yellow birds that he saw, and then the 6 white birds. And it wants us to find the total number of birds that Carlos saw in all. So we are going to begin with 7, fill in 7 in our tens frame. So you could use a filled in circle to show the 7, and then to show the 6 white birds you could do an open circle like that. But we want to know, how many birds did Carlos see in all? On number 10 it says Emily picks 8 red flowers. Then she picks 8 yellow flowers. How many flowers does Emily pick in all? So we want to know the total number of flowers that Emily picked. So again, we are going to use our tens frame, and if you don't have different colors, you can just use our pencil trick that Mrs. Collier was telling you about. So it wants us to fill in our tens frame and show the 8 red flowers, and then show the 8 yellow flowers. So use our 10 frames to help us find 8 plus 8. And again, you'll need to pause the video because Mrs. Collier is just talking about these questions. I'm expecting you guys to just pause the video at the end of Mrs. Collier talking about it before she begins talking about a new one. So I know some of you may still be working on number 10, so I want you to go ahead and pause the video because I'm going to talk about number 11 and then number 12. Number 11 says, look at the model. So that is our tens frame right here. It says, complete the equations to match what the model shows. So it wants us to write the equations that match our tens frame. So our tens frame shows us that it is full, so we know this is 10. So our equation begins with 10, that's already filled in for us. Now we need to write how many counters are outside of the tens frame. So how many counters are outside of the tens frames? That would be what Mrs. Collier just circled. So how many counters are here that I circled? Write that number in the blank and then add 10 plus this number here and write the total. And then it wants us to write, so how many yellow counters were there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So then it wants us to write 9 yellow counters plus how many total red counters? Write that number here. Equals what? And remember that these two sums are going to equal the same number. And number 12 says, which number belongs in the blank? So we have 10 plus 1 equals 11. So 6 plus blank equals 11. So which of these numbers would go in the blank? Is 6 plus 16 11? Is 6 plus 11 equal to 11? Is 6 plus 6 equal to 11? Or is 6 plus 5 equal to 11? You are going to fill in that letter choice. And then once you have answered all the questions on our workbook for today, then you are all done with the math lesson. I am going to put a quick check in this assignment today just so that you can take a couple questions and see if you truly understand. So this will help Mrs. Collier see if you need any help on any part of the lesson or if there's something that as a class we need to go back and look on. And please remember, we are not going live today for intervention, so everyone for math intervention needs to log on to Imagine Math. If you have any questions, please let me know.